Your grandparents came to Amarillo in 1899. They came by train. At that time, there were very few automobiles anywhere in the United States. So everything was done pretty much by horse and buggy. Now, did your grandfather have like a team of horses to use for transportation?
No, they went everywhere on foot. They after they got here, my grandmother had two baby girls she was carrying when they got on the train, and she also had a kitchen clock. You know what a kitchen clock is?
No, I'm not sure.
Kitchen clocks, are clocks about that big, about that tall, and they got a chime in them, and you have to wind them up once a week, you know, and all that. And the one I've got's walnut. It's a beautiful clock, but she brought that clock with her when they came out here with those two girls. Anyway, after they got to Amarillo, well, they proceeded to have 3 boys and 1 more girl. And they all grew up right here in Amarillo. And that was a time that I always thought it was a good time. There from about 1900 on up, 30s and 40s, but those kids went to school, and my grandfather was in the floor finishing business. But first, he was his first job when he came to Amarillo. He was working for the Santa Fe Railroad, laying down ties and rail and nailing it all together, and they were laying track around here. And then he moved up to another job in the railroad, and then after that he went in to business for himself.
I was going to say that was a huge transition because he was a business owner in Georgia before he came out to.
So he built a planing mill down there at the corner of 15th and Johnson. Sat over there on the southeast corner in the intersection down there, kind of that box plant right there is occupying part of that ground. And this planing mill, back at that time, what they did was, if you really had a big operation, you had usually a single source of power. If you lived down in Georgia or places like that where they had running water and that type of thing, you go down there and build you a water wheel and set it up down there and build you a sluice and bring that water over, and the water would run over onto the water wheel and make it turn. and that's what you ran your machine operation, or your gin operation, or whatever it was. You did that with a water wheel. Well,
So it's all mechanical rather than
yeah.
electrical.
So, come to Amarillo, there ain't no stream or anything like that. So what he did was he got one of these great big huge hit and miss engines. You've probably seen them. They had flywheels on them, probably 6-8 feet across.
Oh yeah.
You have to get out there and turn that wheel, get it going. And that's what they ran their planing mill on. You go in the morning when you were getting ready to start planing, and you put the knives in the machines that you wanted to use for making whatever it was you're going to make. After you got the knives in there, you go out there, you start up the engine on the planing mill, let it run for a little while and see if any of those knives are going to come loose, because they come off, and kill you. So they had, he and another fella had that planing mill down there, and I don't know what happened, but somewhere along the way they decided to part company and sold off the planing mill stuff. And my grandfather then went in to the floor finishing business. There's a sign up there that said Warren Floor Company. That was his business, and he made, he finished those floors and everything. They did that all the way up until I helped them on the floor in 1970, and I think that was the last floor they did. My uncle talked to my dad and asked him if he'd go there and finish that floor. That floor is made out of little pieces of walnut wood. They're about 4 inches long, about an inch wide, dovetailed together all across there.
And where was this at again?
They were made out of pieces of wood.
Well, I know. Where was the building at?
Oh, it's down there on Civic Circle here in Amarillo.
Okay.
It's a home.
Okay.
And the guy that owned that had contacted my uncle, and he wanted to get him to finish it. Well, my uncle's richer than you can imagine. His in-laws have been extremely wealthy. They had ranch land up in Moore County. They discovered they had the discovery wells for the gas and oil, everything up there on their property. So anyway, my dad was in the bank, but he'd do some stuff on the weekends when he wasn't doing that. If he needed something done, well, he'd go out and do that on time off, and it was quite a chore to do one of those floors like that.
Yes.
And we went in there and finished that floor. It was beautiful. But anyway, Warren's had a going outfit for a long time. That floor fishing business was pretty lucrative in its day. Back in the days they were in the floor fishing business. They was building Amarillo's first subdivision, which is San Jacinto. And they'd go out there and sand those floors. I remember my dad talking one time. He said they were out there working on a floor, and he showed me the house it was years ago. But they were finishing floors in that house. Back door is open. He looked out the back door. Said the wind was out there just kind of swirling around the sticks and stuff in the grass and the ground and everything. He said, I knew right then we had one hell of a storm coming. And he said the next morning there's 16, 18 inches of snow on the ground. My grandfather was a expert with steam engines. That's what he used to run his mill down there in Newburgh, Georgia. He had a mill down there when he came to Amarillo. He never had driven a car. And for a long time they had a guy that had a buggy and a wagon. I mean a horse. And he'd come over there and they'd load their equipment in wherever they were going, and they'd do the floor, and when they got through, the guy'd come back and they'd load all the stuff up and take it back. And then my uncle and my dad got old enough to handle it, so they bought their first vehicle, a Model T Ford. And said his dad got out there in that Model T and they cranked it up for him. He got it going. He couldn't figure out how to stop it. He's out there hauling, whoa, 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 whoa. Finally he run into the wood pile where they kept the firewood, and then they lived in 1103 Lincoln.
Yeah, I was going to ask you where their home was.
It's down 1103 Lincoln. And in those days, 1103 Lincoln was a pretty nice address. This building we're sitting in right now didn't exist back then, nor did anything around here exist. The railroad was here,
Right.
and there's a little stuff starting to come in here.
And as a matter of fact, weren't some of the nicer homes closer to 3rd Street? I
Well,
believe one of the original Ware homes was
yeah, now
in that area.
the Amarillo had what they called the Bowery,
Yes, sir.
and that ranged from Fillmore Street east to the railroad tracks, from the Santa Fe railroad tracks, no, from the Burlington, or the
Rock Island.
Rock Island tracks were over to where 3rd Street is. That was called a Bowery. And at that time, it was pretty much a commercial area. There's some houses in there, but there's a lot of commercial businesses in there. They didn't have all the rest of this stuff in the city. This was the early days.
Yeah.
And anyway, my dad and uncle could drive that Model T, so Grandpa would just, they got ready to go do something, he'd just tell them to get up there and drive him where he wanted to go, which they did. And he never owned a car that he could drive. But he owned that Model T.
Yeah.
And they moved from 1103 Lincoln to what today is 2000 Hughes. But those years they lived over there on Lincoln were exciting, to say the least. He said there was a lot of tough kids over there. He had to take care of all of them. And he did. He went to the Johnson Street School. The Johnson Street School was located at the corner of 3rd and Johnson, right down this street out here.
Mm-hmm.
Had a great big 3-story school down there. I think at that time, school went from beginning to graduation right there at that building.
And this was long before the red brick schoolhouse on Polk Street, South Polk.
Yeah. And
And I understand that when they decided to build that school out on South Polk, the people of Amarillo got so upset because that school was being built so far out in the country.
nobody out
that
there.
People got very upset about that, and it wound up where the city commission pretty much resigned or was forced to quit. There was so much contention over that the city became unincorporated, and it remained that way for what, about 8-9 years?
I think so.
Yeah.
Boy, there's a lot of stuff that went on back there. At Johnson Street School had the kids.
Hello.
Like my father and my uncles and sisters and everything. That's where they went to school. And
I presume that would have been a wooden structure.
no, it was masonry.
Oh.
Very early, but it was.
And I guess that was built after the very first schoolhouse, which I understand was made up of the wood frame Potter County Courthouse, which was removed from 5th and Bowie, where they built a stone courthouse And they
They,
moved that wooden building over to approximately where the Globe News building is now, and I understand that there was a playa lake there at that time. And not too long after they moved that building over there, big rain come
got
along,
flooded.
and also there was a fence around that schoolyard because dogs and pigs pretty much roamed the street
Yeah.
freely, and so they built that fence around the school to keep the pigs from getting on the playground while the kids are out there. But then when that big rain came along, that playa lake filled up, they had to hire a man with a team of mules and a wagon to ferry those kids back and forth between the shore and the school building, which I presume was built up a little bit.
Well, a lot of stories came out of that school. A guy named Tom Robinson and Roy Balderson went to school down there. And then they ended up buying or building a gun and key shop down there on 6th Street. And that fronts where that tower is down there, because it's on 6th, between 6th and 7th.
Oh, the old water tower.
No, the old American National Bank building.
Oh, gotcha.
But anyway, my dad and Roy and Tom all went to school together, same grade at the Johnson Street School. And anytime you got those three together, they'd have an argument as to who got their fanny beat the most by Miss Patty. Miss Patty was a teacher, and she was a strict disciplinarian, wore those white gloves to hold that chalk in and everything. And she didn't put up with no crap. Well, those three would get together, and they'd start arguing about who got their butt beat more by Miss Patty and who got worked over the most. And that's about a 30-minute discussion every time they got together. It lived on. That building they had faced 6th Street, and then down on the West End, there's a door there that went out to the alley. There's trackage there, but the dumpsters and stuff were back a little ways, and they had that door there. Well, we'd left the bank. My dad and I was on our way home. So my dad drove up there to Tom and Roy's and said, "We got to go talk to these folks." I dutifully got out and went in, and as soon as I got there, those three were after each other. They were just going after it. My dad was standing at the end of the counter. They had this big counter that went all the way across the building, and my dad was standing right at the end of this counter, facing the east, and Tom and Roy were right there on the north side of the counter, right there by where my dad was. And they were all over there talking and going on. I was out there looking at the guns. They had a lot of pretty guns. And I looked up and started back over there. They're still going at it. Some guy staggered through that door up there, went up and said something to my dad. He just turned around and knocked that son of a bitch all the way out the door, out there between them railroad tracks. They just went on talking. Finally, the old boy kind of started waking up, and he finally got up, walking horseback down the railroad tracks. I never knew what it was about. I was never told what it was about. It just matter of fact, you know.